Hello guys, good morning and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So my name is Hauma_KE, and if you're a beginner gardener, this video is for you. Here are a few tips that I use here in my kitchen garden to grow a few crops. So for me here, I use what I have to produce majority of these crops, like the tomatoes. I get the seeds, the tomatoes from the market, and then always save the seeds, especially if I see a very juicy tomato. That's what I will plant and produce. I will plant the seeds and produce tomato plants and eventually tomatoes from my own garden. So if you're beginning gardening, always use what you have because it will really help you in navigating through knowing what to grow on this area, what this crop really wants for it to do really well. For example, the tomatoes, after you've planted your seeds, give them some time. After they've reached a height of around 5 inches, you can transplant them now to the ground. When you want to take care of your tomatoes, always start trimming your tomatoes really early so as to allow your tomatoes to start spreading early and eventually becoming a very healthy crop. When you trim them, they produce so many branches. Always when you're planting your tomatoes, always intercrop it with other crops like the basil. Basil will really help your tomatoes to have that really nice taste because a basil has very strong tastes or scent in them, so and it affects majority of these crops that you plant near them, and tomatoes is one of them. So as I talked earlier about trimming helps it to produce more leaves, and also the plant will concentrate in producing healthy flowers that will eventually become healthy fruits at the end. So that is the major thing that you do, and always support your tomatoes early. So I'm done with the trimming and also uh, supporting the tomatoes. I'll be uprooting now the tomatoes that I planted. They've lasted here for like 3 weeks now. So I'll be uprooting them so that I can plant them at the front part of the garden. The good thing about my front part of the garden is that it has a lot of sunlight, and tomatoes love warm weather or hot weather. So if you can do irrigation, you're in a hot weather area, you can decide to do irrigation. That's why also tomatoes do really well during inside a greenhouse because the weather is warm. Let me check my carrots to see if I can start harvesting them because they have stayed here for this is the 3rd month now. So, and you can see they're in good size. Carrots always depend on a well-drained soil and they will do really well. So because here I plant majority of my seeds from scratch, these are the bell peppers, yellow and the red bell peppers. I think I'll give them like 1 week before I transplant them. And the easiest way to maintain your bell peppers is by tipping. They love when you tip your bell peppers and also the eggplant, they tend to produce more leaves, and majority of these crops, even the tomatoes. So when you tip them early, like this one, I tipped them when they were really small, so they have produced more leaves, and even you can see the flowers are very healthy. So that is the good thing about that, and you can also decide to do that also with your eggplant, because these two crops or three crops, they tend to stay in the farm for a very long period of time. And funny enough, I've seen it's like a flower. So our eggplant have started producing flowers. So soon we'll start harvesting some eggplant from our farm, which is the first time. So if you're doing gardening as your first time thing, always consider planting, trying to do crop rotation and intercropping. So for me today, I uprooted spring onions from this section. So what I'll be doing, I'll be planting one row of tomatoes and another row of spring onions. So spring onions really work really well with pest control, and also you can decide to plant marigold, lavender, but because marigold and lavender tend to be very bushy, but I'll plant them at now the edges. I have like four seedlings of marigold, so I'll plant them at the beginning and also at the end, only just one each, or you can decide to plant the lavender. But spring onions really work well with majority of the crops, so you can decide to plant spring onions with your cabbage, with your cabbage, with your spinach, with your sukuma wiki or kales, or you can decide also to intercrop it with your tomatoes. But also because uh, I want to plant also the basil in between, so I'll be planting like two in this section that I'm planting now, the tomatoes with the spring onions. So I'm majorly only on one row of tomatoes, one row of spring onions, and see how it will work. So always prepare your farm early. Like this section, I prepared it last week, I think like 5 days ago. So always give it like 1 week so that the pests that are in the ground to die off, so that when you plant a new crop, the pests will not take over that crop. So that is the easiest way. And when you're preparing, you can decide to pour manure, then dig up your ground or your land, and then pour in some wood ash, and then leave it for like 4 days or 5 days, and then you can now come and plant. And because here today this is the third day, I think the fourth day without rain, so what I will do, I will plant and then pour in, irrigate them or sprinkle some water for them so that they do not wither. And the good thing about planting tomatoes, even if the plant is very small and tiny, it rarely withers or dies when you plant them. So after some time, especially if you plant and then water immediately, they catch up with the ground very fast. So I'll also show you uh, how they will be tomorrow, and that works the same way with bell peppers, and also I've realized with the eggplant, they rarely wither or the plant rarely dies when you transplant them. And And I am using the traditional way of spacing of just using my hands, or you can decide from plant to plant, you get like 5 to 6 inches, and then from row to row, you make a row of 1 foot. 1 foot or 1.5 foot is enough, and that will be perfect spacing for your crop. And that is what I do majority of the times here. And in my last video I said that I'm going to try and now plant my crops systematically, not just placing them everywhere. So from now on, I think I've decided to just plant them either in a row straight line, or decide now to plant them against now the flow of the water. And because the spring onions were too many, I've decided to plant also spring onions at the edges of my carrots. And the good thing about planting spring onions, they always expand and produce more. So if you plant one, after a month or 3 weeks, you'll have like 10 spring onions from just that one spring onion that you planted. So, and here we consume spring onions a lot. If you see my garden, I've planted spring onions inside the cabbage, inside the spinach. I've planted also spring onions inside the strawberries, and that is just the way I do my farming here, my small scale farming here. So you can also tell me in the comment section what other crops you plant from the seeds that you get from the supermarket, the grocery store. Here we call supermarket or grocery store, or just the normal traditional normal market, what other seeds, because from the garlic, the ginger, I rarely buy seedlings here. The only seeds that I buy are maybe carrots, because I've never let my carrots to fully mature until they produce seeds, or the onions. Of course, I've never let them stay until they produce seeds. So those are the crops that I buy seeds from the shops. But the other ones, I just use what I have from the market and then produce my own crops from scratch.